excited to be here at the second edition of the Football Innovation Forum. And I'm delighted to be on stage with Javier and Appu and to get to speak to all of you today. So to start out, I want to get to know a little bit more about Appu and Pixstory. So Appu, why did you create Pixstory and how do you use the platform?
I think the largest threat to humanity after climate change is online toxicity, which is hate, misinformation, algorithmic manipulation, and polarization. So, like the electric cars and the clean energy emerged as a response to climate change crisis. We are the first electric car in the social media space. So, what we're trying to do here is to try to create a safe space where athletes, clubs, fans can have a respectful conversation. At the same time being having their own point of view. So, and you might have this question, how does it matter to football? I think football is also facing one of this same crisis. Like you got the racism, hate problem, hate speech problem. So what we're trying to do here is to create a platform where all the stakeholders can have a conversation with mutual respect. So.
Perfect. And how exactly does it work? Like, how do you stop the hate speech, or how can you change people's behaviors?
The key word that you used is behavioral change. So, that's going to take a long time, for sure. There's no shortcut to that. The way that we approach the subject, it is not just a tech response. So it's a combination of tech, design, and moderation at scale. So it's a combination of these three. Create an ecosystem where you disincentivize hate speech and misinformation, and reward ethical behavior.
Perfect. I personally love the app, especially as an ex-female player. You can get a lot of grief for playing football as a female, if you guys didn't know that. And the app really allows you to speak your truth. It doesn't have to always be what everybody wants you to be saying, but you're allowed to go on there knowing that you're in a safe space where people can't attack you or come at you. They can disagree with you, which is something important to know. You can disagree and have a discussion on the app, but you're not going to be attacked or trolled, which is really important, I think, today in our sports community for the athletes to feel like they can talk about what they believe in. So many athletes have social backgrounds and social work now that this app is really doing amazing things. And now to you, Javier. You've been in the sports industry for a couple years now, one or two, right? And you're currently managing partner of Aser Ventures. So can you tell us, and especially the audience, a bit more about your personal role at Aser Ventures?
Yep. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, World Football Summit, and it's great to be here in Seville, preparing the next edition of World Football Summit in the city. So Aser Ventures is a mix between a company and an investment fund. And we work in the intersection of three key pillars or three key sectors: sport, entertainment, and technology. So I run the sports side of it, so the investment fund related on investments in sports. But at the end of the day, everything that we do is we try to invest in companies, projects, or startups, or ventures that are have an element of these three. My specific role has to do with purely sports. So we invest in properties, like Leeds United is part of our portfolio. But actually the strategy for the future is to start building up a network of different clubs, not only in football, but in different sports in Europe and other places, but starting in Europe with the base of Leeds United and then scaling up for other properties. The second part of my role has to do with investing in companies that are related to sports tech. The typical verticals that everyone is aware in the sports industry, which has to do with performance, has to do with well-being, fan engagement, venue management. I'm not discovering anything here, but at the end of the day, from our perspective, is the way to structure actually those companies that they have as the final user, the athlete, and those companies that they have as the final user, the fan. And finally, what we try to do as well is to build up and scale up sport rights properties or certain areas within current sport properties in order to generate value and generate more income and more revenue for these properties.
Very interesting. The part that was really interesting for me, and it's something we're seeing a lot when we talk about investments within football, is you guys discussed about not just a multi-club, but multi-sport. Is it possible to share which other sports you guys might be looking into first, or if you haven't already started to work with another sports besides football?
It's true that you create even more synergies if you are in a specific sport, because at the end of the day, from the performance side of it and from the analysis perspective, you can gain those synergies. But obviously, there are other synergies that can be created in multi-sport. So at the end of the day, a fan that attends a baseball match or a football match, they are expecting the same thing, the same experience. So obviously there are less synergies, but we truly believe that multi-sport brings other opportunities as well.
I think there's a ton of synergies, especially if you guys can't tell I'm American by my accent. So the US university system kind of proves that you get a fan base that follows, for them it's a school, but it's a certain brand that they're selling, and that crosses basketball, football, soccer, different sports. So I think that's a great plan. And keeping with you and Aser Ventures, what are the investment priorities currently, and any opportunities on the horizon for women's football?
I wouldn't say that opportunities specifically in women's football. What women's football has to do is obviously to develop, and obviously perhaps we'll talk about that later on, how can we develop women's football and promote women's football. But from an investment standpoint, and obviously those companies that are related to sport, I don't care whether they are related to women's or men's football. At the end of the day, it's a question that they bring value to any property or any right holder that can develop jointly. So our priorities are mainly related to football clubs right now. Obviously, we are making big analysis on different opportunities in different countries in Europe, obviously outside the UK, because we already have our investment there. And actually, I cannot share because we are in the final process of due diligence, but we are finalizing a couple of investments in companies that are mainly based on sports tech technology applied to the fan experience.
Amazing. And sorry, Appu, we're going to stick with Javier for one more question. What is the value that Aser Ventures can bring to their investments? What does Aser bring to the table?
At the end of the day, is synergies, because our portfolio is very broad, and our portfolio, since has to do with these three pillars: sports, entertainment, and technology. We can bring those synergies not only for the companies themselves, but also cross synergies among the different investments that we execute. So obviously, if we have a certain startup or company in our portfolio, that can be applied to Leeds or other clubs that will invest in the future, and the other way around. And obviously, the commercial strategy of different companies, since the clients are very similar, all of them are in the sports industry and entertainment industry, we build up also commercial teams that can target our final clients from different perspectives.
Awesome. So, Appu, talking about synergies and bringing different things together, especially within sport, Pixstory sponsors Juventus as a club, but you specifically sponsor PSG Women. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about the partnerships you have with Juventus? And then also, you guys are starting to kind of transition and also bring a new sustainability model into your sport entities. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. To begin with, the European football has a tremendous influence, not just in Europe, but globally, right? So that also means that you have the European football has a lot of social responsibility to address some of the urgent problems that we're facing in the world. And what Pixstory is trying to do is trying to create a clean social space. And we didn't find anyone better than the European football teams to kind of take that message globally. To specifically your question about why a women's team of a particular team and a men's team another one, equality and inclusion is at the heart of what we're trying to do, right? So what I see mostly in the mainstream social media platforms, there is enormous influence that male athletes, footballers have over the women football players. So what we're trying to do here is to try and create a level playing field. So it's not just about like your stardom that you have on the field, but it's also like the stance that you take outside. So, and I think women football is at a critical juncture, and I think it's going to like make it really big. So we wanted to invest in a club, in a set of players who have amazing story to tell. So the core of our campaign is the right to be you. That is, you have the right to be who you are, and you have the right to tell your story. So all these players that we looked at, and the PSG women's, had tremendous stories. I mean, their story from where they came from and what they achieved, I mean, including you, it's amazing. And we want to invest in a women's team. That's precise reason. And talking about the sustainability, your second leg of the question, I'm sure most of you have seen the UEFA Sustainability Report 2030, and I think it's a vision document, right? So eventually, the industry will move towards that, and more importantly for the fans, the younger fans, it's not just your performance on the field that matters. It's also your stand that you take outside the field, be it on racism, be it on climate change, be it on equality, human rights, refugee rights. So the user acquisition strategy of Pixstory is something very similar to what Javier just mentioned. It's sports, entertainment, and social justice. So then the biggest challenge for the football industry is now industry is going to move towards sustainability, but how can you make revenue out of it? So, and that is something that we worked on, and I think we've cracked the.
So Pixstory can make revenue from sustainability for clubs.
Yeah, and that's the future, and that's what we've been working towards.
Great.
I find this very absolutely relevant because at the end of the day, sport is one of the greatest tools from sustainability perspective. And there are many different companies that are looking to implement a credible sustainability strategy, while sport is already there. So, and actually the social impact and the relationship with the fans from now on has to be purely based on what is the impact on that on those communities. So.
Yeah, and also just to add further to what you just mentioned, from the partnership perspective or the sponsorship perspective of the clubs as well, like a smaller partner like Pixstory will bring in much less in terms of revenue at this point of time, but the intangible revenue or intangible goodwill or value creation that we bring to a club is enormous. Like, so the benefits of that you see once the industry fully matures into, like, say, 2030. So,
are you guys able to put a value on the intangible that you can bring?
Of course. Look, in the balance sheet, there was always used to be this element called goodwill, right? And for the most industries, that used to be the where much of the value has been stocked, right? So I think going to future, when you actually see the value proposition that you bring to the table, when your fans and other sponsors actually see this is much more important, I think that's where the game is.
So you're bringing a different kind of value to the clubs through Pixstory. As you said, you don't necessarily have a huge financial backing that you can give them from the investment perspective, but you're creating a different kind of value.
We're trying to unlock the economic value of trust and integrity, right? So there is a value to that. Now, how do you unlock it? That's the problem statement that we worked on.
And going to a question to both of you. Without bringing fans into the conversation, I think we would do a disservice to this topic.
Absolutely.
So, from each of your respective roles and companies, how important are the fans when it comes to closing different kinds of partnerships?
So this is again stays at the. I mean, when we start thinking about the Pixstory as a model, one of the key things that we debated internally is that there are two kinds of fans, right? Like, the fans who truly believe in the club, but also doesn't have the same economic might. Today, the fan engagement is mostly moving towards a direction where the fans with the means are able to kind of engage deeper with the club and the favorite athletes, be it NFTs and on those space. Whereas what we want to do is to try and create a space where the fans are recognized for their true affiliation or loyalty to the club. At the same time, helping them also to earn something. So it has to be a win-win situation. So today, if you look at the flow chart, the fan engagement is from the clubs or the athletes towards the fans. Whereas what we want to do is like it's both ways. So we create a win-win situation where the fans, which is a key stakeholder to the entire industry, the clubs or the athletes, and a platform like a media entity like Pixstory trying to bring it together and create a win-win situation.
Perfect.
No question that fans, together with athletes, are the key stakeholder in the industry. This is obvious, and we have to stick to that. And actually, and obviously, in the sector, the main goal right now is to access as much data as possible from the fans, and obviously to involve them, to know them and obviously to serve them the way they would like to be served. But having said that, and actually to raise another point related to fans as well, is there's some noise, especially in football these days, about what should be the role of fans in the governance of clubs. And here I have to say that it's not realistic, or at least in my view, it's not realistic, the role that some people are trying to provide fans into football clubs in terms of even daily management or influencing decisions. It's not realistic. It will be very nice, but it's not realistic, because at the end of the day, football clubs, they have a social impact, as we were talking before, but also they are companies. And if they don't perform financially and from sports perspective, they'll fail. And if they fail, they go bankrupt. So I definitely believe in the potential of fan involvement. But at the same time, I think we have to be very realistic and not creating expectations on fans, making them think that they are going to make the key decisions of a club, because it's not realistic. So obviously, we have to set up a scenario, an environment where fans can influence, where fans can contribute, but at the same time not create the artificial idea, that they will make the key decisions of a club, because it's not realistic.
So do you think this is a narrative that we need to start speaking more about?
Absolutely.
Because recently the narrative has been is fans can have a bigger say, fans should have a say.
They should have a say, and obviously I've started my last speech saying they are the key stakeholder, they are the most relevant stakeholder, together with athletes. But it's not realistic, on the other hand, that they can make the key decisions from a business standpoint, because at the end of the day, how you interact, how you manage that, it's not realistic.
This is a great topic to put on Pixstory and start the discussion and get people discussing about it.
Absolutely.
And we can assure that you won't be trolled, for sure.
I have a question for the audience, though. Can you raise your hand if you have been a part of, not contributed to it, but if you've experienced hate speech or any negativity on social media, or even if you've just seen it relating to your favorite club or the club you work for or organization?
Well,
only a few people. Wow, so not so many. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not going to call you out by raising your hand, but I feel like more people probably should have been putting up their hand. How can clubs or organizations, Appu, be flexible with a partnership? You've looked at the partnership model differently. Obviously, you support Juventus as a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. You support PSG from a women's scale. Obviously, it's a micro partnership. So where is the flexibility in that role, and how is Pixstory strategically going after different entities within sport?
So one of the first things that we need to keep in mind is that there's one set of problems that the clubs are facing, which is the hate speech problem, the online toxicity, which is impacting their goodwill, it's impacting their brand, it's impacting the mental health of the players, the athletes. So that is one problem that we're trying to solve. The other problem that we're trying to address is that you got this enormous fan following in mainstream social media platforms, but are these fans engaging with the core activity of the club? Are these fans engaging with the core activity of football? Or are the clubs making money out of it in a different way? So what we're trying to do here is trying to create a model in which it goes more of a deeper sponsorship activation, whereas the clubs are leveraging their brand, their loyalty, with a platform like us, along with the other set of sponsors, and everyone get a smaller pie of it. So at the beginning, it will look very small, but as I said, once the industry matures, like the UEFA vision document says, by 2030, they wanted to implement the UEFA sustainability action plan. So when the industry matures, it's a long-term play, but there will be much more bigger value to be taken out of it. So micro sponsorships with a lot of flexibility, where I think the clubs need to recognize that the future is changing and the value system is changing, and the fans the fans demand it, right? So they also need to partner with the right set of the sponsors or partners who are aligned with the core values of the clubs, and then try and figure out a model in which they earn a revenue, even if it's small, and then build on that vertical. So different set of fans, cluster them into different category, and have a deeper engagement.
Great. Javier, there's something I want to touch again upon. We talked about the fans and their engagement and how they relate to a partnership, but you brought up another interesting topic, the athletes themselves. how can we help athletes align with the partners within the clubs or the different investments that you might be working in, and how do you keep in mind the athletes' values when doing so?
No, athletes are absolutely key, and obviously, when we talk about athletes, it's a completely different scenario where they are individual athletes or they are part of a club of a team. Individual athletes, they run themselves, the big ones, as a company, and they do it by themselves. On the side of a club, at the end of the day, it's a question of alignment between the athlete, the club, and the companies. So for me, the key element in partnership or sponsorship, as we call them, is strategy compatibility. So at the end of the day, is to what extent the strategy of the company that approaches a club or a property, the strategy of the property, they are fully aligned, so then they can work in the same direction. And after that, within the property, how we approach and how we involve the athlete in order to be part of that. And obviously here there are very different models, because some clubs, they keep the rights of the athlete. So at the end of the day, that's the club who has to manage with that, obviously. And we are seeing these days some conflicts of athletes that they don't believe, or they think that certain brands are not compatible with their personal brand, and what do we do with that? So there are many issues there. When the athlete does not let the property or they don't give the marketing or the image rights, then it's a question of that alignment becomes much more difficult. But at the end of the day, it's a question of what is compatible between the three key stakeholders.
Awesome. And going into athletes, Pixstory actually has a major athlete ambassador within the organization who's, funnily enough, not a football player. How does his relationship with Pixstory work? And as him being an athlete, what does he bring to the table to help you guys in how your partnerships should look?
Like I said, as far as Pixstory is concerned, we have a very strong sports, entertainment, social justice intersectionality. And we are very lucky to have Dwight Howard, the Laker player, as our investor and the brand ambassador. So, all these players at this late stage of their career recognize one thing, that they want to leave something behind for their kids and also for the younger fans, like a legacy. And they're identifying issues where they wanted to spend the rest of their career. So as far as we are concerned, Dwight is very passionate about spreading positivity and creating a safe space. And he says that he's doing it for his 5 kids. And that's something that we are very happy about. So what I think going forward in the future, the athletes, they have enormous influence, right? So, and because of the enormous influence, they also have enormous responsibility. So I guess going forward, they will all align with a certain set of issues or a topic or an industry they're passionate about, and will deeply engage with that going forward post their sporting career. So it's a great combination, actually, because there is a certain amount of social consciousness that they bring to the table, and also sensibilities, and they understand the industry pretty well, and they also help you network with the similar athletes and across the platform. So,
great. And this is another question to both of you. Looking at the market right now, besides Appu, your sponsorship deals, do you guys see any unique deals on the market that you think is a good example of a hybrid partnership?
Him start.
I was looking forward to him to give an answer. So, I think the socios model was definitely, I found that as a very amusing and an interesting model, where there is a certain number, they actually monetize and unlock the value of the fan loyalty. So I think that's a very interesting model for sure.
The one I've thought about is not a sponsorship itself, but it's a campaign. And it actually is a campaign that developed by one of the clubs in the city, which is Real Betis.
Okay.
And the Forever Green campaign, which has to do with obviously the colors of the team, but also the strategy, the sustainability strategy of the club. And I think that's really, really smart, bringing kind of the essence of the club from a kind of a colors perspective, but also implementing a sustainability strategy that is well beyond many other clubs in Spain. So I think that's a pretty good example. And actually, that's something that companies that approach to the club can activate in a very smart way. So I think bring from the colors of the club to a key trend in the market, which is sustainability, then brands can follow and can activate based on that campaign.
And do you think that the clubs are deciding the trends, or they're looking at the community in large, seeing what trends are happening, and then trying to realign and reevaluate?
I think it's the latter, actually, because at the end of the day, we are living in exponential times, and things are changing so rapidly that I don't see clubs on a general basis setting up the trends. I think it's the other way around. It's adapting to the key trends from a social perspective, and then following those trends.
Do you think the clubs need to continue to follow those trends? Will they be left behind if they don't follow the trends, or for some of them kind of hold tight and keep their own personal strategy or their own value chain?
Obviously, you cannot follow every single trend. You cannot react to every single trend that is out there. And actually, you have to bear in mind also your strategy as a club and what is compatible of the trends in the market with the strategy you want to implement. So definitely you have to react to certain trends, but you cannot react to every single trend that is out there.
Awesome. Any final thoughts from either one of you on the hybrid partnership in sports?
No, I think there are many opportunities. And actually, in my view, it's not only a question right now of hybrid partnerships, but it's also a question of building up platforms together with companies, in the sense that sport entities are in the middle of many ecosystems from many different perspectives: healthcare, well-being, content. So they can play a key role being in the center of ecosystems and becoming true platforms together with companies. And there is a space there. You can call them sponsorship, or you can call them strategic partnerships, but at the end of the day, it's how clubs can work, properties can work with companies in order to obviously generate more revenue for both for the companies and for the clubs.
I completely agree with him. I think there is sports is at the heart of a lot of ecosystem, and probably like intersection of many ecosystems. So there is a great opportunity to kind of find common goals and the common synergies between different stakeholders, and try and have a deeper strategic partnerships which will enhance both the revenue, just not for the clubs, but also like for the partners, the strategic partners. Definitely, I think that industry is just getting to unlocked, and over the next few years, you will see a lot of these players moving into that space, activating one element out of the ecosystem and running with it.
Perfect. I'm a big fan of questions, so I am going to ask if anybody has a question. I'm not sure we're supposed to do that, but I will anyways. Any questions while you have these two gentlemen on stage? No? You guys are a really great crowd today, just let me tell you. Really awake and ready to go. I'm sure you guys are all just counting down to the game tonight. Oh, thank you so much.
For you, I didn't know about your company from Mexico, so I know you guys are not already there. So I've been reading a little bit about it. It's kind of like the social media, right?
Yeah.
But we all know soccer is really big in the world and have different types of people following it. You know, really poor people in Mexico or really rich people. So how do you manage in your social media? Because I know you're like filtering and making it positive. How you filter your content for that everybody in different. That's me. Thank you.
So that was a really good practice round. Now you can re-ask your question and align it.
So is resuming everything. How you?
Sorry. He's coming from Mexico, so he's speaking with this point of view. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like, in Mexico, soccer, it's called like a circus right now. In Mexico, everybody loves soccer, and a lot of people, from the really poor ones to the really rich ones, follow it. So it's really difficult to talk about soccer in Mexico because you don't know the perspective of how much they can do it. So in your social media, how you manage to create content for everybody, from people that are looking for just like as an investment or only for, fun. So how you manage to mix all of it in one?
Okay. Yeah. So firstly, look, the content is created not by the platform but the users, right? So if I understood your question correctly, so the key problem that we are trying to address is to take the the toxic element out of the social media, so that is hate. So we also recognize it is contextual, right? So what is hateful in a particular context may not be hateful in another context, right? So what we need to do is to create an ecosystem in which we can pursue these conversations. So, I mean, this is my way of, so I use a lot of F word, right? That's like, to describe food, place, but is that hateful? It's not, right? But when I change the tone and and then use the F word, that's when it becomes hateful, right? And then there's also different, and I come from a state, southern part of India, so one particular word means hair in the nearby state, and the same thing means an absolute slang in my state, right? So, but how do you reconcile this? So you need conversations, you need engagement, you need dialogue. So what has been broken down in the online space over the last 10 or 15 years is that ability to have this conversation in a respectful manner. So you suddenly get onto like each other's throat. If you don't, so it's okay to agree to disagree, and that's the space that we want to create. So we're not trying to solve the world, every problem in internet, but we're going to take certain aspects of the internet and clean it up, and also create a space where you can pursue truth and conversations.
So I can answer that a little bit too. I'm quite familiar with the platform. I think it's a matter of, as you said, though, poor and rich can post. It's not Pixstory creating the content unless they're helping their partners and their sponsors create content. But a poor person, just like a rich person, as long as they have access to a smartphone, tablet, whatever that might be, can put their opinion, and they can have an open discussion amongst each other on the platform. So it kind of creates an equal playing field. You post a photo, you post your written word, and then people can comment and make articles on that. And as long as there's no hate, the conversation continues. They don't have to agree with each other. It's not roses and rainbows and like this perfect world, but there can be an open discussion and try to ask questions amongst each other to get real feelings and kind of the truth, which is what Appu was talking about before.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a question for you, Appi.
Okay.
And a little bit is a kind of philosophical question. Is talking about maybe the concept of your social platform. Could survive, live together, social justice and economic interests?
I think there is a space, definitely. I'm totally convinced there's a space. So our philosophy is good ethics can be good business, right? So there is definitely a space for that. So let me give you a specific instance. I think if we manage to aggregate a large set of users who believes in social justice, respect, just decency, basic decency, let's put it that way, right, into one space, then I'm sure that we can actually command a premium when it comes from advertisers or sponsors, because we are actually, what is one of the key problems of big brands, right? You actually see big brands exiting some of the big social media platforms because they don't want to dilute their brand by placing that particular ad next to a hate post, right? Because brands are goodwill is built over billions of dollars and thousands of man-hours, and you don't want to dilute that by placing it next to the incorrect content. So if you can actually create a space where at the core of it is being respectful to each other, integrity and truth, we think we can actually build a viable business model. So that means you cannot have unlimited profits, you cannot have unlimited growth, and we recognize that. And we're happy with sustainable profit and sustainable growth.